Well, today's trip takes me to Mountain View, California. I'm visiting Doug and Heidi McIlwraith. The couple live on a tree-lined street in the San Francisco suburb of Mountain View. Today, this area is part of Silicon Valley, but when their home was built in 1906, it stood alone as a rural farmhouse. Living here can't help but conjure up thoughts of years past. And when Doug came upon an antique version of Old Glory that was in use the year his house was built, he just had to have it. Protecting and displaying such a fragile fabric, though, can be a challenge, so Doug and Heidi have invited me to help them find an answer. So tell me the story about the flag and its relevance to the house here.
I'd been looking for a 45-star flag because there were 45 states in the Union when this house was built in 1906. So found this flag under a pile of 50-star flags and said, gotta have it.
It's interesting that he's been talking about this for years, and then we actually found a flag. It's pretty amazing.
All right, so where are you guys thinking about putting this?
Well,
the living room has a couple of options for us.
Okay.
Right.
Want to show me so
Sure.
we can see what your options are here?
well, we thought about over the mantle, which we think would be certainly a prominent place for it. And we've also thought about over this wall over here. These are essentially the only two walls it could fit
Big
on.
enough, really, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah. I think what we ought to do, guys, if the flag will tolerate this, is very carefully, let's bring it in here and just kind of hold it up.
Okay.
The fabric is very fragile, so we keep handling to a minimum. But it does help to see the flag in both locations before making the decision where it will hang. Our display case will have two parts. First, we'll build a stretcher frame similar to an artist's canvas. This will be covered with 3 layers of material, onto which we'll attach the flag. Next, we'll build a shallow display case, place the stretcher inside it, and finally install a sheet of clear acrylic plastic for protection. Our first step is to cut strips of poplar for the stretcher frame. The top and bottom must be exactly the same length, so must the 2 sides and the cross brace. The best way to assure they are the same length is to measure the first board, square up the ends, clamp the boards together, and then cut them at the same time. Now, perfectly flush here, perfectly flush down there. We know that these two are exactly the same length. All right, we're going to do the same thing now with these shorter pieces. Let you guys do this. All right, guys, we've cut out all the pieces for our stretcher frame. Now we're going to hook them together using something called a lap joint. And it simply requires that we cut half the thickness away from 2 pieces of wood, and then they kind of interlock like this. So, to cut that, we're going to use a router, and to help us get really accurate with this, I've made up a little holding jig here out of some pieces of this same 1x3 poplar. And so we'll start out by putting 2 pieces of lumber in here like this. And I'm just going to put a shim in here to kind of wedge everything tightly in place like that. And this is the router that we're going to be using. It's been fitted out with a 3/4 inch straight bit, and I've got it set at the correct depth right now to cut exactly halfway through these pieces of lumber. The base of the router is placed up against a temporary fence that's part of the holding jig. See, I made the first cut right here using this as a fence. That gives us a good straight shoulder right here. Now I'm just going to go back and forth and very carefully take out the rest of that material. All right? See, we removed just half the thickness right here from these 2 boards. So we just flip these around now. We want to do the same thing on the other end. I tell you, you 2 are aces with this tool here.
You're a good teacher.
There you go.
That was fun.
Yeah? Was it fun?
fun.
I'm going
Was
to
it
be
fun?
buying a router this weekend.
Oh, no.
This sometimes happens. Now we're going to put this together, and we're going to use some glue. So what I like to do with this kind of a joint is to put the glue in a container like this. You know what this is?
A glue container.
It's the bottom of a water bottle that we cut off.
Okay.
And these are great because you can throw them away when you're finished. We brush glue onto both pieces of wood, being sure to cover the shoulders or sides of the joints as well.
So is wood glue always as strong as nails would be? What's the point of wood glue? It's just an extra adhesive?
You're asking all the tough questions today, you know? Well, nails are a mechanical fastener. They're only going to hold where there is a nail. This is going to bond the entire surface. Once this glue dries, it will be stronger than the wood itself. Now, you ready? Just drop it down in there. You have to give a little tap with your hand. Well, maybe more like a bang with your hand. We glue and insert the sides in place, then apply glue to the face of the stretcher frame. Doug, if you can grab this. This is 1/4 inch thick, acid-free foam core. Acid-free materials help protect the flag from further deterioration. We also use rust-proof staples to attach it to the stretcher frame. For the sake of the flag, we don't want anything here that's got acid in it. We don't want anything that's got the potential of rusting. Okay. This is polyester felt. It's going to provide a little bit of cushion behind the flag. And also, if you ever decided you wanted to sew this flag on, which is the way conservators often do it, this gives you a little bit more material for the thread to grab. Again, using rust-proof staples, we attach the felt on one side, stretch it tautly across the frame, staple the remaining sides, then cut off the excess. Finally, we add cotton muslin, stapling it to the frame as well. With our stretcher now complete, we've moved it inside to mount the flag. We carefully spread it out and very gently attempt to smooth out the wrinkles. The way we're going to attach this is with these little pins. These are ball-headed pins that are stainless steel so that they won't rust. And in order to make sure that we space these evenly along the edge, I've made up a little gauge here. It's just a strip of wood with marks every 3 inches. Now, it's important to point out that there are a number of ways to mount a flag like this. A museum conservator, for example, would most likely sew the flag into place using a far more painstaking approach than we are. Our method, though, will display and protect this flag for many years to come and allow us to do so within a reasonable amount of time and for an affordable amount of money. Well, guys, now it's time to start the work on the display case that stretcher frame is going to go inside. And as we mentioned earlier, we're going to make this out of oak. And the first thing we want to do is cut 2 grooves or dados on the inside. One of these grooves is going to hold the 1/4 inch plywood for the back. The other groove is going to hold the acrylic plastic for the front. Okay? Gotcha. And I've got the saw set up here. This is a dado blade. In this case, it's actually just 2 blades sandwiched together to give us about a 1/4 inch groove there. And I'll put the throat cover back in there. I've also clamped on a feather right here. Mm-hmm. That's to hold the board down in contact with the table so that this groove remains a consistent depth. Now, in order to join the ends or corners of this display case together, we're going to want to cut some miters so that they'll look like this. And then the 2 pieces will go together like that, give us a nice clean finished corner with no end grain showing, all right? I've drawn a cut line on each frame section and set the miter saw blade to 45 degrees. Okay, so that's the piece we cut off. And this is our first miter. All right, here are the sides that you guys put the dados in, mitered so nicely on the ends. Those are ready to go. This is a piece of 1/4 inch plywood down here. So what we're going to do is just glue these sides onto the edge of the plywood. We run a bead of glue into the bottom dado. And the important thing here, what I'm trying to do is to get this up on the sides of the groove so that it's not just in the bottom. We slip the frame section over the edge of the plywood back, making sure we're flush at both ends. Give me just a touch. 1/16th maybe, and 32nd. Good. Next, we apply glue to the miter joints and to the frame sides. Then set the sides into place. All right, we're just going to pin this. This is a pin nailer again. I'll do this first and then you guys do the rest of them. We glue and nail the bottom and sides of the case. We'll attach the top later on.
Okay, ready?
Next, we move back indoors to address how we're going to hang this large, heavy case. We're going to use 2 strips of wood, both of which have a bevel cut on the edge like this. Now, it's going to be kind of hard to see this when we put it up, so I made up a little sample here to show you how this works. Let's say this is the back of our cabinet right here. We're going to put one of these strips with the bevel pointing down on that. We'll put this other strip, which matches it, on the wall. And then when we put our cabinet up, the top cleat will nest right inside the bottom one. And that's a very strong way to hang something. We apply glue to one section of the cleat, press it in contact with the back of the case, and attach it with nails that will hold everything in place until the glue dries. Next, we place the other mounting strip on the wall and screw it securely to the wall studs. This is a big moment, guys. This is when we put the flag in. Drop it down. Should it fit? Ooh, wow. Nice fit. Okay. Now we're ready to slide our acrylic plastic into place. We leave the protective covering on to make sure we don't scratch the inner surface. We also wear gloves to protect our hands from the cut edges. And what's kind of important here is that we kind of go in at the same speed. Good. With the acrylic in place, I attach the top of the frame. Remember, we left that off earlier. Here, instead of glue and nails, I use only screws. This way, if Doug and Heidi ever want to remove the flag later on, they can unscrew the top of the frame and simply slide it out. Finally, it's time for the unveiling. Old Glory and all her glory. All right. What a beauty. There we go.
There it goes.
Okay. Heidi, stand back. How are we left to right?
Really pretty good, just maybe 2 inches to Ron's right.
Just slide it down. That's the beauty of that cleat system.
Oh, that looks pretty good.
Okay. All right. So what do you think?
It's amazing.
Wow. Makes a statement, doesn't
It
it?
certainly does. What a tribute.
Certainly does.
Tell you one thing. Makes me want to stand up and salute. From a stack of old flags in a small-town antique store to the wall of a 1906 farmhouse, I can't help but feel this grand old flag has truly found its home.